One of the first piano solos that I ever transcribed was this one from Brad Mehldau's performance of Blackbird. It comes from his album The Art of the Trio Volume 1. And as aspiring jazz pianists, there's so much that we can learn by studying this recording in detail. And in this video, I'm going to break down what Brad plays in this recording step by step so that we can use these same ideas in our own playing. There is a long-standing tradition of using popular music, especially from the Great American Songbook, and letting jazz musicians put their own interpretation on top of it when they perform. But in an interview recently with Rick Beato, Brad was talking about how this is kind of a different thing. The instrumentation has changed so much from the Great American Songbook era to today, where guitar is now the main focal point of so much of our music. And he was talking about some of the unique challenges that comes with trying to mimic the sound of a guitar.
And what I seem to be attracted to over and over again is doing open stringy guitar stuff and just trying to put that on the piano.
Now this is a great example of this in action because we have this open G string on the guitar that Brad is mimicking by playing this repeating quarter note G over the entire piece. And then he kind of brings the feel of the fingerstyle guitar in with... So let's take a look at it. We're here in G. Now, a lot of this song is in 3/4, but actually this fingerstyle pattern we're looking at is in 4/4. Now we've already talked about this open G string that's just going in quarter notes, and it's basically repeating forever. But the fingerstyle pattern that we're playing is based on a 16th note pulse. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Now to get the finger picking feel, we're going to put in kind of a counter rhythm that's going to play against these 8th notes. And it goes like this. It's on beat 1, and then it's on the second 16th note of beat 2. So we have this dotted 8th note. Then it's again right here on beat 3, and then once again on the second 16th note of beat 4. So if we count this out, 1, E3, E1, E3, E1. So we're playing a G major chord here. So we got 3 notes that we need to account for. The G, the B, and the D. So let's use all 3 of these. We're going to put a D here, and we're going to put a B here. Now we're going to take this rhythm that's on top and we're going to disperse it between the B and the D to give us that fingerstyle pattern. So let's give the first one here to the D. I'm going to put it here on the second 16th note of beat 4. So that gives us... In our right hand, we're going to fill in the other notes that are missing. So we've got a dotted 8th note on the second 16th note of beat 2. And then let's just make this a half note like this. So that's our groove. So going through this, I see Brad's point. We're not really doing the kinds of things that we would have done to jazz up an American songbook tune. We're not reharmonizing the chords. We're not adding extensions or alterations to the chords. We're not making fancy dominant chords with lots of tension. We're not swinging the tune. Quite frankly, it's really close to the way that Paul McCartney used to play it. So other than adding an extra harmonic note on top, we're really pretty spot on with the original recording. So we've got kind of 4 distinct sounds that are in the original song from the Beatles that I think Brad replicates pretty well here. The first one is this pedal G. I've already talked about this. The second is the guitar finger picking. The third one is this bass line, which moves chromatically. And then the fourth one is, of course, the melody. And he really pushes and pulls the melody to try and mimic the way that it was sung. Specifically, he's thinking about that 16th note pulse. And then when he plays, I think that by keeping the melody kind of in line with that 16th note grid, he's emphasized this fingerstyle picking thing even more. If you listen to Paul McCartney play the original lines, I think you'll hear all 4 of those same distinct ideas in his playing.
Blackbird singing in the dead of night.
Listen for the bass.
Take these broken wings and learn to fly.
And the fingerstyle pattern is there, right? And now here's Brad. See if you can hear all 4 of these components. It's the pedal, melody, finger picking, chromatic bass line. Now, if you look at the PDF transcription that I put down in the description for you, you're going to see a whole bunch of time changes. The song itself is in 3/4, but there are tons of measures that are in 4/4 and a couple even in 2/4. These time field changes are not something that Brad added into his interpretation, but these are actually in the original tune. So how is this different than just like a really masterfully done solo piano arrangement of the original Beatles song? Well, here we go. Brad's technique is just so darn perfect. You know, I just find it so inspiring and how much control and care he puts on even the smallest little nuances and details of his playing. Now notice even when he's soloing, he's trying to keep all of these components in place. Still got that open G string, the chromatic bass line. Now the finger style thing is still kind of there, just by the nature of the 16th note feel. Of course, the melody is gone because he's soloing. Now, even though his melody line has gone to a much more sophisticated place, it still sounds like Blackbird because he's kept the other three components there. So all of us have friends who are not into jazz as much as we are, right? And maybe you're not ready to trade off those friendships for cooler friends just yet, but this is a great way to introduce your friends to your love of jazz, because who doesn't know Blackbird? But when we get to this part of the song where the solo is going, my friends start to look at me kind of weird, right? Because this was not the sound that they expected to hear next. Yeah, it's very colorful. The original song Blackbird is quite diatonic. That's just a fancy way of saying that all the notes come from the same key. We're here in the key of G, and we have this G major scale. And if you look at the notes that we play, all of those notes belong to the key of G, including the melody. All notes that are part of the G major scale. So when Brad is soloing, he's using the same notes from the key of G, these diatonic notes, and it sounds very nice, home, comfortable, and resolved. At least until he plays a line like this. Right here. So this line is a lot more dissonant, right? Has a lot more tension in it. And that's because he played a lot of notes that are outside of the key of G. He played a lot of non-diatonic notes, or here in jazz, we just call them outside notes. But the whole purpose of that is to create tension. Metaphorically speaking, he's creating kind of a story arc. We're starting at home, where it's nice and safe and sound, and then we're going on a bit of an adventure. We're encountering some obstacles. We're going off the beaten path. And when you see a movie that does this, right, you lean into the storyline because there's an expectation that everything's going to work out all right in the end. We're at home. Tension's ramping up. Fully outside. Coming back home. And we're home. So for us, as jazz players, the sophisticated, refined, cultured people, it's really fun for us to understand the specific techniques that Brad is playing to tell the story. For example, I hear a lot of this outside stuff that he's doing as being a side slip, meaning that he's keeping his left hand going here with this G, but he's playing in the key of A flat, up a half step in his right hand, which creates that clash until he brings it back home. See, these are bluesy notes. Not necessarily a blues scale, but the blue notes that we would hear from the blues. Now, Brad is such a horizontal player. Now, admittedly, I'm probably too much of a vertical player myself. When I say vertical, I mean I'm playing lines that are derived from the chord. So if I was playing like a 2-5-1 here in G, I've got this A minor, D7 to G. And I might use the notes of those 3 chords to invent a line. So while I've made a melody out of it, the notes that I've picked for that are very much inspired by chords and chord voicings and things like that. But in my observation, Brad thinks about things much more horizontally, meaning he's thinking about the melodic line first and foremost, sometimes even multiple melodic lines that he's weaving together. So if you try to take these horizontal lines that Brad's playing and you write them out on a piece of paper and try to put chord symbols over top of them, it gets really messy, because the chords that come out of that are oftentimes really unconventional and difficult to read. It just doesn't reflect at all what Brad was actually thinking when he was playing. I'm sure that Brad's horizontal playing is influenced by Baroque and Romantic music. Brad has talked a lot about how Bach and specifically Brahms are some of his biggest inspirations. The best way to learn jazz is through studying great performances, and I do one of these transcriptions every single week, and I email it out to my newsletter subscribers every Wednesday morning. And then on Friday, a bunch of us jazz nerds get together on Zoom and we study it together. You should come over and join us at jazzlibrary.com. These transcripts and workshops are totally free. And when the time is right, you can upgrade to a paid membership to take advantage of all of the resources we have there to learn to play. Brad is one of the best pianists of my generation. He's a huge, maybe my dad's generation? I don't know. But he's a huge inspiration to me because of how intentional he is. He doesn't hide behind all these fancy jazz chords and voicings and arpeggios and all of this like showmanship, right? Everything is so intentional and transparent. If you want to bring a little bit of that kind of focus to your playing, you can check out this video here, which is going to give you 3 different ways to keep your solo lines from getting stale and boring.